Welcome to the Enlightenment Evolution Hour. I am your host, Rob Gauthier, the ET Whisperer. The Enlightenment Evolution Hour is a part of the Enlightenment Evolution Network. Any ideas expressed by the guest, myself, or commenters may not necessarily reflect the same opinions of the Enlightenment Evolution Network. Enlightenment defined. It is the state of giving or receiving greater knowledge and understanding about a certain subject or situation. Evolution defined. The gradual development of something, especially from a simple to more complex form. So what is Enlightenment Evolution? The state of giving and receiving greater knowledge as we develop from a simple to more complex human being living on Earth for our soul's experience. Welcome now and join us as we explore our Enlightenment Evolution Hour together. The Enlightenment Evolution Hour is simulcast live every Wednesday at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific from the Enlightenment Evolution Hour page, Matrix Minds Facebook page, and the ET Whisper YouTube channel. It is also redistributed from the Forbidden Knowledge News Network and Conscious Awakening Network. Hey everybody, welcome to the Enlightenment Evolution Hour. I am your host, Rob Gauthier. Thank you guys for hanging in there. We just had a few technical issues, but they're solved and we're here. I am so happy to see all of you guys already in the chat, already chatting, already active. Welcome to this week. Now, I am going to do announcements like I always do. We've got a great guest today. She's not a first-time guest, but the last time she was here, she was a part of a bigger group. But now we get to spend some alone time with her, Georgia Jean from Circle Evolution. And she's an amazing person. I got a chance to spend some time with her when I was in Sedona. So we will talk to her in just a minute. But before we do, we've got to do announcements, as you guys know. First of all, we're going to be doing next week on the show. We'll do show announcements next week. We'll have Jamie Price. She is a light language channeler and a channeler. She's really amazing. I also got to meet her when I was in Sedona. She was with the other channeler, Lisa Royal Holt, and I met her before the event started. Before the event started, when we did Reuben's portal CE5. She's an amazing person. We're going to have her in next week. The week after that, I'm sorry, I don't have my calendar. I know Shelly Young is going to be coming back. It's been a while since we've talked to her. She is an amazing channeler and a good friend, and we'll be chatting with her soon in the next couple of weeks. And for the network, tonight at 11:59 p.m. Eastern, 8:59 Pacific, if you go to Instagram Live and go to Out There Talk with Valiant himself, and that's on Instagram at Out There Talk, all one word, you will find his show, Out There Talk, and that's an amazing show. He's going to be live tonight too, and you can catch him every Tuesday and Wednesday, or Wednesday and Thursday every week. He does an hour show over there. And also for all of you guys who are from the Matrix Minds, all of you know, to go check out the Matrix Minds Facebook page. A lot of great people over there. And also Matthew does his show over there, the Matrix Minds, and it's always need of people's support and energy. And all the donations that we get through the Enlightenment Evolution Hour, we give over to that platform for allowing us to simulcast over there, and also help him run his show, because his show is amazing and it's really an important one too. As for the ET Whisperer, there are a couple of announcements. The first is that just in a matter of a couple of weeks, on the 25th and 26th of this month, that's 2 weeks and a couple days, Tyler Ellison and myself are going to be doing a 2-day channeling event. It's an online event. You can join us at home. If you go to etwhisper.com, click on the poster with me and Tyler. You can go sign up for that event. Tyler is a channeler of Sasani, Rio, or Ryoka. We just had him doing a channeling with me a couple days ago on things. So if you want to go sign up for that, please go to etwhisper.com. Check that out. Also for the ET Whisperer, I will be going on the very end of this month to shoot an amazing show. And this show is going to be a multiple episode series, and we're going to be shooting the entire series. And I'm going to let you watch this little 1-minute trailer. And as soon as we're done with that, we're going to come back in and chat with our guest tonight. So enjoy the Oneironaut, which will be in full swing production in just about 3 weeks, guys.
You probably don't know what an Oneironaut is, but it's okay. You will. Your consciousness is not trapped in your head. It's free to travel anywhere, through time or in space. You just forgot how. The dream world is real too. And, if you get good enough, you can connect with other intelligent consciousness, other dreamers, or people who have since died. The people you meet might not even be people. Just ask Rob Gauthier. Rob enters a deep trance so that alien beings may borrow his body and use his voice to share their messages with us. That's why they call him the ET Whisperer. With Rob's help, along with the extraterrestrials that work with him, we will explore the unknown reality that surrounds us all. With enough practice, even you can become an Oneironaut.
So we will be producing that, and as any of you who are on our Patreon know, that was a voice of William, who helps us out with our Patreon. So check that out. When we get some information on it, we will be sharing it here and everywhere that we have. I want to talk about our guest today. Again, this is her second time here, but her first time alone. The first time we're going to get some real time with her. Georgia Jean is the founder of Circle Evolution and has been channeling the Circle of Light, a non-physical collective dedicated to the evolution of human consciousness since 2004. She's been doing this for a while. She's several years before I even got into this community or understood what spirituality was. She had been already channeling. She's been featured on Gaia TV with our dear friend Reuben Langdon, Interviews with Extra Dimensionals. That's season 3. If you haven't seen season 3, you can go to interviewswithed.org, I believe, and go check out the episodes there. And she hosts the podcast Coming Out of the Cosmic Closet. And she's also the author of Amazon bestseller The Circle of Light and The Philosopher, Another Magnificent Day, and Keys for Unlocking the Soul's Potential. As an experienced channeler, she's brought forward thousands and thousands of hours of advanced information about how energy and creation actually works. And she's supported hundreds of clients through both physical and material challenges, goals, and as well as shepherding them through the process of spiritual awakening and learning how to architect energy in new and supportive ways. I could go on and read lots of facts about her, but I think the best way to get to know her is to bring her in. Georgia, welcome, and thank you so much again for being here. I know you're coming from a long, long ways away. You're from down under right now, aren't you?
I'm in down under, yeah. I'm actually visiting my mother now, which is very interesting.
Has it been a while since you've been to Australia?
I was here in April. Yeah, so I come back fairly regularly, but it's always interesting to come back to the source point imprinting that our parents are. And yeah.
Well, that's amazing, and I definitely want to talk about that here in a minute. But I want to start off where I start off with all the guests. Obviously, you have a story, and we're gonna talk about that and get into that. But before we do that, there's always the place from childhood, the young years, the part of your experience that kind of formed your personality, your decision making, that influenced you in general. What are the experiences and things that you had happen in that early life that opened you up to have the story that you have and to be able to channel and do all the work you're doing?
Well, it's so interesting that I am at my mother's house because so my mother basically had a, quote unquote mental illness when I was a child, sort of brought upon by, combination of postnatal depression and also some traumatic events. So for me, my early imprint was very much being kind of unparented. My dad spent a lot of time traveling, working, and I kind of had to evolve through a pretty challenging childhood, as I know many of our fellow awakeners do. But I also had my imaginary friends, which, of course, once I started channeling, I realized that they were either aspects of my future self coming back to look after myself through those difficult times, um, or my first spirit guides. My imaginary friend was named George, so I used to communicate with George. And the other big impact we had is that we also traveled a lot. My dad was an engineer, so I was born and we lived in Papua New Guinea. Then we came back to Australia, and then we lived in Africa, and then came back to Australia. And so from a very young age, I was like traveling, going into different worlds, different cultures. And while a lot of that was probably sort of destabilizing from just a personal development point of view, a lot of it was also setting the foundation for me to be someone who had like a lot of adaptability to different situations and circumstances. But I knew from an early age it was very strange, because I think at 13 I remember saying to myself, I was aware that I didn't have a great, and I want to say that both of my parents were not terrible people. It was just like this kind of circumstance of a mother who was pretty checked out, with her illness, and a father who was away working and traveling. That there was something missing. And so even at 13, I was like, I'm going to have to talk to somebody about this at some point. And, and, um, and so my personal development journey started very early, if that makes sense. By When I was 15, my stepmother gave me a book on palmistry. And then I just had this real hunger to understand why we are the way we are. And I started learning palmistry, and then someone gave me a book on iridology, and then astrology, and tarot came into my life. So I just was always had a kind of a deep fascination, I suppose, about how we're formed. And then when you are kind of unraveling some of your own challenges, you as you go along that journey, as I went along that journey, it just opens you up more and more to different aspects of consciousness, imprints, and where do these patterns come from. I always had a high degree of challenge in my life. And that, a lot of the things that I've experienced, we kind of talk about this as an idea of awakening masters. We support a lot of people who've had to kind of walk a mastery pathway by having a high degree of challenge and learning how to overcome things, which ultimately weren't just personal imprints, but were also collective imprints. Maybe I'm going off track here a little bit, but it was just always there. Let's put it that way. It was just always. I remember even sitting in class, and when I was in grade 10, kind of, and not from an egotistical way, but I just was aware that my sense of consciousness was more like I was just thinking about things differently and in a different way than the kids at school. And then when I actually learned about reincarnation in grade 10, because I'd gone to Catholic schools, I was like, oh, that makes a lot more sense why I feel like I have this kind of deeper knowledge base than most of the kids that I was at school with. So yeah, it was just always there, and it just continued to be so.
Well, that's fascinating, and you know, having hardships, I found that a lot of people who channel
Mm,
throughout their life either go through really, really hard lives or set up with really easy, resistant, free lives, and I don't meet
mm,
many people in between. It's usually one or the other.
one or the other. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting. So, um, growing up in Australia,
Mm,
what was that like? A lot of our listeners are North American, either from America
mm,
or Canada, and then the other larger chunk is probably UK and Australia. So some
yeah.
of our listeners already have that, you know, dead on.
Mm,
They've lived that life, but
yeah.
culturally, how did spirituality fit? Was it something that you had not really ever heard of before? The concepts that you understand and now know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a great question because in Australia, particularly at that time, Catholicism and, your traditional Church of England. I mean, my growing up was like Church of England or Catholicism. And I actually was baptized Church of England. And also, just to be clear, even the time that I lived in Australia, when I talk about we moved around a lot, I was born in Melbourne. We went to Papua New Guinea. We went to back to Melbourne, then to Africa, then to Perth, which was at that time the most isolated capital city in the world, which is where I live right now. So culturally very different, even from Melbourne. Then I went back to Melbourne to live with my dad, and then I ended up living in Sydney. So I've lived in three of the major cities here, and they're all quite different as well. And then I left Australia when I was 24 and started traveling. So even with the other international things in between, I was kind of always getting exposed. So in terms of the early imprints, um, the earlier imprints even was when I lived in Africa, because they're some of my first memories. I went to a local, I lived in Nigeria, a local African primary school. So I was like the only white kid in the class, basically. And that school was very, the buildings were half built. There weren't any bathrooms that you could use in the school. They were the one little block was just so so gnarly. Nobody used it. It was quite, I mean, it was awesome. That was actually probably the happiest part of my childhood, living in Africa. But the imprint of that, like we used to get caned if we were naughty. We used to have to bring the canes to the teachers if we were naughty, and we would get shamed if we were bad, which meant the whole class would kind of turn on you and go, shame on you, shame on you, shame on you. So I went from that, and then we came back to Perth, and I went into a um, a not very wealthy but private Catholic school, which was a totally different deal from my much more free ranging African life. Um, and it was there that um, we started like, it was a Catholic school, so we'd have to go to church all the time. And we also did choir and singing in the choir. And because I was Church of England, I actually didn't totally belong to Catholic Church. Like I wasn't allowed to do the Catholic rites. And I think like First Communion and I forget what the other one is called now. So for me, what that left was this sort of, and because my parents were splitting up, this desire to connect with something and be part of something. And I used to love singing in choir. I ended up converting of my own volition to Catholicism when I was like 15. So I was, whatever it was. I was probably younger, maybe 14. I was just a total little Bible basher, honestly. And, but I had to go through a catechism where you go with the priest, and, we talked a lot about Jesus. And I used to take myself to church. And I do believe that was the first place that I knew I could connect with something outside of, you know, normal life. There was this idea that I could connect with some kind of spiritual energy. So I'd had the invisible friends, but I think that was just like the first version that was available was the Catholic Church, and then I was going to a different Catholic school, a little bit of a more upper middle class Catholic school from my high school. And that's when I started rebelling against the Catholic Church, because that's when it became more, I was more aware of like the indoctrination that came with church. So there's always like the connection you're making through your spirit, and then this sort of awareness that there's like this indoctrination. And that's where I also started to learn about reincarnation and past lives through history. We were studying Indian and Japanese and Chinese culture in history. And I was like, wow, that I just knew made more sense to me than what the sort of indoctrination coming down through the church was. So it was sort of a combination of finding my way. And then I did like what a lot of people, I think, do when it just didn't. I just kind of went, I was rebelling against the Catholic Church sense of God. So I sort of went through a phase where I probably didn't really believe in God as the Catholic Church represented the sort of, the man in the sky who gets to judge us. But that's also when I started learning about, astrology and palmistry. And then I was just in that, I don't really know phase for a while. And it probably wasn't until when I started traveling, and then when I came to America, later I can't remember actually what I was really believing in my 20s, probably definitely like reincarnation. And I had also, someone had helped me to learn transcendental meditation. So I started transcendental meditation when I was 20 or so, around that then. So yeah, it was just kind of like this unfolding. But my first major spiritual kind of experiences of energy happened when I moved to America. And things started unfolding. But yeah, but living in Australia, pretty much at that time, most of the quote unquote spirituality pretty much came through down the church pipeline. But my stepmother was a Buddhist and she meditated. We did have exposure to other things. And actually, when I was in Africa, we also had, I saw the medicine men and the juju, as it was called, which was the sort of witch doctor kind of stuff. The witch doctors would come through town, and we were always told to like hide inside and all this stuff.
Oh,
so
wow.
when the witch doctors came through, yes, I have some pretty vivid memories of that. So I don't know. It was like I said, I was exposed to a lot of things, which I think has helped me have a bit of more of a loose consciousness to take in new inputs and then try and synergize it all as we're kind of going along, getting like I think everybody on the spiritual path probably struggles a little bit with there's all this sort of different messaging, and our mind wants to lock into something exact, but it really is about finding that way to synergize all of this wisdom that comes through these different, religious and spiritual portals and find the universal truths that really are consciousness in its purest form.
Yeah, that's the thing I see a lot of in our community. A lot of people poo-pooing religion and things like that. And I understand why, especially if you had to grow up like we did, exposed to the church. And, mine was a pretty severe thing. My parents forced it down my throat until they knew they couldn't anymore when I was about 13 or 14. And then it was done.
That's where we're all like, to hell with you.
Yeah, and the church, they just didn't want me coming back because I made it hard for everybody. I did the questions like, but
yes, yeah.
that whole thing is it still has a purpose,
Absolutely, yeah.
A lot of people have the experience of connecting like you did, like to God or the Holy Spirit or Jesus or whatever it is they're connecting to, which makes them understand they're not just a meat slab on a rock floating in space, which is great.
Yeah.
So can you
And I
tell
think,
us? Oh, go ahead.
well, and just, in terms of like the Jesus vibes, because I had totally at the when I was in high school, yeah. So I had converted to Catholicism, and then, a couple of years later, I was fighting with the nuns about, like, abortion rights, and getting kicked out of class for kind of having a voice about, things like that. And failed religion, which is to this day, because I was a bit of a straight A student. It's like the only class I ever failed was religion. 2 or 3 years after I had converted to Catholicism. So, but I will. One thing I will say about that. Well, there's a couple of things. So first of all, the relationship to the Jesus, I think when I went through the catechism, there was some of that core value stuff that I really resonated with, which was kind of love everybody, and Jesus's pure message. But I had to kind of reject Jesus, as that kind of Catholic version. And then years later, when I was in San Diego, and some of my first spiritual experiences started happening in hypnosis, I did a session, and they asked for my spirit guide to come through, and it was Jesus, and I was like, "What the hell?" No, there's no.
I thought we were done with this.
Yeah, no, we're done with this. But then, of course, as things have evolved, at the Christ consciousness, which was really the spirit that I was connecting with, was the vibe, basically, and my mind only knew at that time how to interpret that Christ consciousness energy as Jesus, and as that sort of biblical character that we know. But I've actually in my book I channel Christ consciousness and Mother Mary, and got a very different interpretation, or very a different understanding of what that was all about, and why I was connecting to it just as an energy that that I would ultimately work with one day, in that this along with many others. But also because a huge aspect of the work that we do now is the heart centering and channeling energy through the heart. I've also come to recognize that because I really used to love, like, St. Francis of Assisi and a lot of the saints. Like, I was like really, really vibed with the saints. And I realized that many of those characters that we have in Catholicism, the saints and stuff, were spiritual initiates who had learned how to bring their consciousness to drive energy through their heart, and that's how they were then making the miracles happen and stuff like that. So it all kind of makes sense as we go along, but I'm not so yeah, I'm able to look at that early affinity and be like, okay, that was the vibes I was always tuned into without the the crazy nun doctrine on top of it. So
Yeah, it's all the good stuff without the crazy, and
yeah.
I get that too. There's a lot. I revisit the Bible sometimes, sometimes out of necessity, sometimes just for my own exploration, and I do it because my family still holds very heavy Christian beliefs and philosophies, and it's not disastrous when I thought it might be. Me coming out of the closet to them, but. I always tell my mom, Jesus is my homie. I love that guy. Everything he said and did was, telling us to love each other and not hurt each other, and that we're all together.
I know, it's so bizarre. Well, actually, and when I channeled the Christ consciousness in my book, because there's so much done in the name of Jesus that's horrendous on the planet, in terms of after that. This sort of, because the Christ consciousness energy, as I channeled it, was, really this consciousness that came in that was held by many people, not just this sort of Jesus figure, but I'm sure that's the kind of concept of the apostles. It was a massive energy that hit the planet that really transformed the nature of love, So prior to the Christ consciousness, and we're talking about, just as we're going through an evolutionary shift right now, that the way we process our experience went through an evolutionary shift, because prior to that, the concept of love was really more of a biological functioning that would keep tribes together. So we would have this love feeling, and that would be part of the survival mechanism to keep the tribes together. So they would keep families together, keep tribes together. And there
That makes
wasn't,
sense.
we didn't experience love as a universal love. So when the Christ consciousness came in, as just in the same way as we're having galactic consciousnesses come in to sort of be part of this evolutionary shift right now, this energy was, oh, you can experience love as a universal love for anybody. And it became disengaged from survival. Like love was an experience that became disengaged from survival. And so that's a lot what, that was, that and it wasn't just him, it was, really like Buddha and a lot of those major, spiritual figures around that time were holding this frequency to start to embed love as a new non-survival attached experience that we could start to have as human creative consciousness. But also that where great love arises, everything in resistance will arise simultaneously. So when we channeled the Christ consciousness, it basically said, it was known that, and that with this new version of a frequency of love, everything that almost is like the tribal notion would rise against it, which was why the church came in to kind of manage access to that power, basically. And the church really wanted to keep the tribal survival systems alive, but it was sort of known by the energy that when it came in, as with any evolution into our next state, everything that's in resistance will arise first. And that's almost like the Christ consciousness, the sense of betrayal that, like, quote unquote, Jesus had on the cross, was this idea that I've brought all this love in, and then ultimately first the resistance shit hits the fan first. And that's really what we are still kind of working through with the wars right now, with everything that has happened in the name of religion and so-called love. How it's, human consciousness is still trying to break out of this tribal programming and survival programming that really generates everything, terrible on the planet, to be honest, and move into our next level, which is this sort of notion of the return of the return of Christ. It's a little bit what's happening now with so many people accessing that true nature of Christ consciousness and trying to push humanity past the illusion, the survival illusion that's really in resistance to it, to the universality of love. I'm having a bit of a rave here about this. I don't usually talk a lot about this, but
no,
so
it's really relevant.
Excuse me if I'm a little not fluid in how I'm trying to express it, because I haven't channeled up, but it's very interesting. So basically, Christ consciousness kind of came in and said, it was known that when we brought this big frequency of universal love into the planet, that there would be that pushback, which is weirdly what the church has become, with its, wars fueled by, who's the right God and all that shenanigans. So all that system could ultimately collapse as well, and we would move past the illusion and back to that pure frequency of love consciousness.
Well, yeah, it's very not ironic. I mean, it's actually very fitting for Earth being what Earth is, how the institution that was meant to spread that beautiful energy and
Yeah.
the understanding became, you know, it took it hostage and made it what
Yeah,
it needed
yeah,
to further itself, which is great. But
yeah.
I think you're right. That energy, you know, we're seeing it right now in the Middle East. It's the
Mm,
manifestation of the greatest energy of why are we still killing in the name of the God who's supposed to
yeah.
be Mohammed, Jesus, all of them were
Mm,
meant to express love and God's love and
mm,
express it to others.
mm.
And this, yeah,
And
it's
it's
really,
all about, it's really more about control. I think, you know, and I'm just kind of extrapolating here, is that when people started to feel that, because I work through the heart center and I've really seen it, it's kind of miraculous power, and also that when you become fully seated in the heart, you gain access to a greater degree of power because and that's not kind of bragging about it, it's just that it's safe once you're seated in your heart and you've moved your framework out of the polarity of the mind, the survival consciousness of the mind, the separation of the mind. You're able to gain more power because it's safer. You're not going to manifest these, you know, crazy scenarios through channeling energy through the psychological mind, the 3D mind. um, you know, it makes me wonder that as people maybe were accessing that power, the powers that be at the time were like, wow, we really need to, um, A, get a hold of this power and now use it to kind of keep the old status, the old hierarchical structures that have always operated in tribal, like tribal programming. The primitive mind programming innately has hierarchical structure, like the alpha male, you know, alpha female. So hierarchy is very much part of the old survival system. And so the church, being run by, you know, humans, still wired and programmed by the hierarchical structure system, saw that power and put it through the hierarchical system. And they, you know, they used to do all kinds of things. Like I remember learning about how you would have to basically buy I forget what they were called, but basically buy forgiveness slips and stuff like that, you know.
yeah.
And like, and they took the power away where it was supposed to be. You know, Jesus was all about, you know, power to the people. Like you got, you know, this is the power you can access. The church was like, oh wow, we better monopolize that. We better be the Jeff Bezos of creative consciousness and hug all that and make us the gateway to access any of it. So yeah, but I think, you know, so it's all very interesting how the you know, our work is always about how does the human 3D egoic body mind system distort or bend or shape reality. And a big part of our work is the nervous system, how the nervous system, which is seated in survival programming on a small and on a large scale, on a personal and collective scale, how much our nervous system has distorted reality into these storylines, such as that we are seeing today. Um, just the worst of humanity, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
so
it is part of that system, and there's two things I want to kind of share from what you shared. The first thing is
mm,
the gatekeeper energy. This tends to be red flags that I see, not just in religion, but even in our community. There's
sure.
a lot of energies that are like, hey, I know what the truth is, and I'm the only person who absolutely knows the real truth. All these other people don't know
Mm,
shit. Come to
yeah.
me if you need the truth. And that system really works on humans for some reason. Maybe it's
Yeah.
the encoding, maybe it's the programming, but it really
Oh
works
my
on
God. Well,
humans.
yeah, I think it is the survival system. And it just, sorry, I want to get, but I get really obsessed with watching like cults, stories about cults too,
Yeah.
because that's where we really see that. And the other thing I'm always fascinated by is how I don't know if you've watched any of the stuff about the Nexium cult, how women will often uphold a male cult leader as well, and it really does go back to that survival programming. You know how women will sort of all rally around like a male cult leader and then be abused by them and
Yeah.
whatever, and it's it really kind of goes back to the tribal consciousness propelling people. So a big part of our work is helping people de move beyond being run by the nervous system.
Well, that's the second thing I wanted to talk to you about,
Mm,
and we've talked about this a couple times, a couple different places.
mm,
When people hear someone say, you have to get out of the mind and use the heart, usually
mm,
what they hear are one of two things: either, hey, I need to be more emotional and connect with my emotions, or they hear, I got to shut off my brain and just let the feelings do the work.
mm, mm,
And
mm.
and that, I know neither of those are actually what you mean. So when you're telling
Yeah.
people kind of
Mm,
get into that heart energy and let
yeah.
that be your guide, what do you mean by that?
So the work that it is, this sort of what we call submission into the heart, uh, or heart centering. Yeah, it isn't really either of those. It's we have to really bring some clarity to this. What it is instead of running energy through your mind, meaning just staying in your kind of in your head thinking, is that you actually bring the center of focus into the middle of your chest, and you start, and it's almost like you do bring your brain and your mind into your heart rather than the other way around. So a lot of it basically is training yourself to focus your energy in the middle of the chest. And I say that because it helps people to not have ideas about what heart centering is. Because if I say heart centering, yeah, a lot of people say like, oh, that means I should just, feel loving all the time and be, yeah,
Right.
just be, like you said, be in the feelings and the emotions. But actually, what it's doing is it's taking your consciousness out of, we like to talk about it like two movie projectors. One movie projector is playing out the illusions that are generated by the mind, and I would say the psychological mind, which has the belief structures, the unsupported programming, the and actually includes a lot of the intenser emotions of the nervous system, which is like fear and rage and anger. They're all part of the 3D egoic body mind system, the survival system that is intertwined with the mind. Um, and actually, instead, you focus through the other movie projector, which is the heart, which is already generating a reality that is beyond the imprints that we get from our childhood, from our cultural programming, or everything that kind of creates our mind, and the biological human imprint itself. The heart center is like a direct channel to the consciousness that lies outside of our egoic self. And the mind then becomes what we call the mind as a tool, which is then the servant to the creative experience of the heart. So the creative experience of the heart, which already knows you're worthy and deserving of love, of abundance, of joy, that you don't have to earn it, that you don't have to, buy your forgiveness chips from the church, that you innately are worthy and deserving, that you are innately deserving of well-being, that innately also in terms of a collective experience, there is enough for everybody, that we then bypass the power struggles that happen with the hoarding of resources in the planet, which is the other, survival programming gone crazy. That you're generating reality beyond all of those illusions. And it's really from being focused, really it's a mastery discipline to get focused in the heart. And then, as again, the mind resists that because the mind and the nervous system want to keep control of the creative matrix, you start to harvest the energy from that resistance to that and then also give it to the heart. So it's kind of like a process but you end up actually a lot more clear-minded, and with it, and your mind is a tool to as the heart manifestation is creating, you're still using your mind to actualize it. Like if the heart is generating, let's just say, some great reality for me in Greece, my mind is still going to help me book the tickets and get on the plane and get to Greece. So
Right.
so it's all about getting it, but it's getting out of, if we look at humanity, when humanity gets into the mind and gets into the polarity of the mind, and everybody's in their opinions and fighting, and I'm right, you're wrong, this is true, this is false. When we are in our mind, we cannot generate a reality that is better than what our mind can create. So we're just looping around in that experience, like that the mind creates over and over again. So, for example, endless war, endless fights over resources, if we're talking about the collective experience now, endless disease, endless endless problems to be solved. That's one of the mind's polarities. Problem solution. We can stay forever generating problems that we will spend all this time solving, only to create more problems somewhere else, because that is what the mind generates. When you go into heart centering, it is an act of submission. It's like an act of saying, well, I don't know how to fix the world with my mind, because my mind is the generator of all these shenanigans. So I'm
Right.
surrendering to the heart, and giving the heart the energy and the power to create something new that I will then receive and respond to, as opposed to willfully try and create something better with my mind. But my mind can't create better, because it can only create what it knows.
See, I love that explanation. That's why I wanted to ask you that too, because I've heard you
Yeah, I
talk about
appreciate
this
it.
before, and the depth and level of the understanding, the difference of using the heart as a generator and a filter and a processor
Yes,
all at the
yeah,
same time is
yeah,
really something that you
yeah,
don't hear that perspective very much. So thank you.
yeah,
I
yeah.
wanted
Thank
to
you for
ask you
giving me
too.
that opportunity. Yeah.
Oh, sure, sure, absolutely. Um, I'm going to ask you this, and then I'm going to step away from the computer so I can make sure our signal doesn't go down on my side. But can you tell us a little bit about the guides that you work with, the Circle of Light, and kind of
Mm.
talk about how you connected to them and met them? And I'll be
Mm.
back in less than 2 minutes.
Yeah, sure thing.
Thanks.
So I can't remember what year it was, 2004. So as my life journey progressed, I ended up moving to America, and I was doing stand-up comedy. And I had started having some of those experiences under hypnosis, where I flashed into one of my first experiences of really going into hypnosis. I was able to go straight into some kind of past life. And I had like 6 sessions with this woman. And as we progressed through these sessions, she was able to get me into the space between lives. And that was some of my first real connections to the all consciousness, reality beyond the illusory framework of the mind. But it wasn't until a few years later, when I was doing stand up comedy, and I was living in LA, and it was a very, very tough, traumatic, actually, time, that I was doing a lot of personal development work. And I had also been exposed to Abraham Hicks, and I had started reading the Seth books, and started, just as I was trying to navigate this extremely challenging experience in my life, was getting these sort of glimpses of consciousness, the law of attraction, and being able to work with energy in a much more masterful way, that we had some kind of control over how energy was flowing in our lives, rather than just being like a puppet. And I had a friend who had a thing called a Pathfinder, which was this like a shamanistic talking board. It was like a Ouija board, but not a Ouija board. It was much more shamanistic, and she could communicate to these energies by herself with it. like the disc would just spin around and just spell out all this spirit dictation. And through that, the energies were saying, we can, if you allow us to speak through you, we'll be able to give you a lot more information. And so we had already been listening to Abraham, and we had gone and seen Abraham live, and I had been called up to actually get to ask a question about how terrible my life was at that time.
What was the tool called again? You said a Pathfinder?
A Pathfinder, yeah. It's like a shamanistic talking board. And yeah, so I would sit there, and I was like, oh my God, she's going to start channeling. Basically, they want her to start channeling. And as I was sitting with her, writing out the dictation of what she was getting through the Pathfinder, they were saying, there's tons and tons of energy here. You're going to feel a little bit weird. And I thought it was all going to happen to her. And then suddenly that energy just started pouring into me. And I was pretty much, we had this kind of 2-day event with this Pathfinder where it was like knock you to the floor energy coming in, cracking open our consciousness to allow this connection to happen. And I think because I did stand up and I was just open in my throat, I could just verbally channel these energies straight away. And they just came through, and they were like, I'm never going to forget it. They were like, we are here, and we're here to help the planet, and you will help us, and you're going to reach millions of people. And yeah. And so at that time,
That's a lot,
It was, I'm telling you, it was so crazy this weekend. We would sit down, and the energy would come into me. And because I was able to channel it, they, through me, guided my friend to get out of her mind enough so the energy could come through and she could verbally channel it. And they were saying like, so she would be channeling and then they'd say like transferring energy, and then the energy would pop over into me. And because it was so much energy, they were really cracking us open. Like we were standing up, we were turning around with it. It was a total like, wapowie. And then we would go out on the balcony, and we were smoking cigarettes because it was like the only way we could kind of stem this flow. We were like, what is going on in there? And then we would go back into the room, and we'd kind of get like literally knocked to the floor with how much energy was coming in. And they were doing stuff to open us up physically and biologically. I talk a lot about it in Coming Out of the Cosmic Closet, the first, few episodes. If anyone wants to listen to the full story, because I talk about how we had to go through this process of learning to trust it and believe it was something that was actually happening. And so at that time it was like they were saying, it's like, Archangel Michael and Seth, and probably names that we could kind of understand and relate to. But now really what I would say is that when we channel, or when I channel, I'm just opening up a gateway, and wherever somebody's question is going to, in all consciousness is coming to meet it at that point. So I've channeled, galactic energies. I've channeled the sun. I've channeled the guardians of the earth. I've channeled so Isis consciousness. I mean, you name it. I've channeled a lot of different energies. But it's really about that, that telephone call that's coming from the person that's asking the questions, both with their conscious mind and also what their energy is calling to have come through.
Yeah, it's unique when people do sessions with channelers who can connect with multiple entities. It's funny to see how different beings bring out different exchanges, even if it's the same being. But when you have multiple beings, it can get crazy. And I don't think a lot of people really understand the dynamic until they've seen someone else have a session, and then they themselves have a session. It's pretty neat. Well, that brings me to my question too now. Like where, if you fast forward to now, and what information tends to be coming through, and how you work with other people, with your guides, what does your work now look like compared to what it was when it first kind of cracked open?
Yeah, because I always joke that when it first happened, um, part of my friend and I, why we weren't really sure if we were just making it up. And remember, yeah, there was hardly any other known channelers around at that time. There was
Right.
Abraham, there was Seth, there was that movie, What the Bleep Do We Know, came out. So there was, I can't remember the name of the lady who channels that. Um, the entity that was in What the Bleep Do We Know? Um,
I'm horrible with
Ramtha,
names. Oh, yeah,
Ramtha,
Jay-Z
who,
Night, yeah.
yeah, who later on I ended up having quite a few people who had been in the Ramtha community and stuff like that came and worked with us. But um, but we were, at first we were like, is this really happening, or is this just an attention seeking part of myself that thinks I've got something special going on? I had to look at all that stuff, but we basically just sound like a Abraham Hicks cover band initially, because it just sounded like Abraham Hicks kind of law of attraction stuff. But quite soon after I started channeling, this piece, which is really our section, I guess, was about the survival mind, started coming in. And if you're on Instagram now, there's so many people talking about the nervous system and, what it does, how important it is that we kind of master our nervous system or take care of our nervous system or heal the nervous system. And there's so much more about somatic healing in even traditional therapy, but we were really bringing through how the
Right.
nervous system shapes consciousness. Oop, are you losing me or?
We did for a second, but only for a
Sorry.
split second. You popped right back on, so you're good.
Okay. So that was a huge piece that always came through. And then I worked with a lot of chronic people, chronic physical conditions, chronic trauma, chronic in different ways. Just as I say, a lot of what we call the awakening masters have had a high degree of difficulty in their lives. And what began to unfold through the work was this idea of the planetary templates and how many of these people, their problems were really seated, not just in some basic belief structure why law of attraction wasn't working for them, but that they were holding denser templates of energy which were connected to collective energy. And being in 2012, I went through a really intense initiation where I was cracked into the all consciousness, where I experienced, the suffering of the entire history of humanity through this. It was building up for quite a while, so I had a few tools to get through it. And that's really what took me, and past, and probably why we channel all consciousness now. This sort of like, instead of it just being a t-shirt, a slogan on a t-shirt, like we are one, I viscerally experienced all the pain of all the planet, of the history of humanity, so I could understand that as all consciousness, all the pain of the planet is me, and I am it. And that was kind of like getting cracked into this, just this next level of understanding how reality is generated.
That's a brutal way to go through it.
It was pretty intense, I have to say. Yeah, no, but I did it just for anybody who's worried about having to go through it. As I was going through that process, I found the tool that could process those dense planetary templates, which is this Infinity 8 tool that we share, and we talk about it in our episode of on Gaia TV, on Interview with Ed. So in finding this Infinity 8 tool, when we were working with the people who were coming to us, who had all these chronic problems and this really dense energy that was a lot bigger than what their human, their singular egoic consciousness could be creating. When we started processing those dense templates with the Infinity 8, it did two things. It started to obviously way lower the amount of dense energy they were carrying, and it also released a lot of energy into their system. And that's where people start to access a greater volume of energy. And particularly if you've got people, a lot of the people that we work with are working with other people or trying to reach more people through their work. And so when you process collective energy, what it does is it increases your energetic field such that you can uplift more people with that expanded energetic field. But you get really cracked into your heart to do that. So, you get this kind of expanded field of influence, but seated through the heart. So you're not getting this expanded energy and then projecting it through your mind. It's through the heart. So we do a lot of that work. And through that, it's supporting that evolutionary shift on the planet to upraise broader groups of the collective through being able to process bigger amounts of energy. And then, and right now it's all about actually de-anchoring out of the 3D completely.
Can you describe to us an example of what one of these planetary templates are? Like, what was a common one that a lot of people would come to you that they had this specific archetype or template?
Yeah, an archetype and template is a good word. I mean, and I can share, for me, like one of my big planetary templates that I've done a lot of work on is actually the war template. And anybody, so if we, the templates are different because a template really just shapes consciousness on some level, or it generates storylines. So even the illusion of time and space is a planetary template. So somebody can come to me and be like, our job is to help really witness people's storylines and get to the template faster, because the little me mind will keep people focused in their storylines. And not see the big template that's actually generating that and a whole bunch of other storylines that are making them unhappy and also experience an unhappy world. So we will do stuff where, so somebody might come and say, I'm just so busy all the time and I can't, nothing's working out. And the template they're helping to dissolve literally is the illusion of time and space, how it can constrict somebody. The war template, which is obviously, there's a template can often have a lot of collective history in it. That is still shaping human consciousness to play out storylines in that frequency and vibration. And that is obviously connected to the old survival system. So that's another big template, is that, and because when you move outside of the mind, you realize that consciousness doesn't have to obey any of these things. Consciousness doesn't obey time and space as we experience it. Consciousness doesn't obey the lack limitation that survival consciousness says exists. Consciousness doesn't obey problem solution as a polarity. Consciousness doesn't obey the idea of whether I'm safe or unsafe as a polarity. Outside of the 3D mind framework, consciousness just is. And it's when you filter consciousness into this kind of game portal that's our mind, that it will start to generate these storylines that we, because we're so steeped in it, believe just have to exist. The decay and entropy of the body is an imprint. It's a planetary template that says, our bodies are going to decay and we have disease and all of this stuff because, that's just life. Well, outside of the 3D egoic mind framework, consciousness is not obeying decay and entropy in that way. So we go in and we dissolve these things. Obviously, when we work with having worked with a lot of chronically ill people, we really went into the biological templates that generate our physical body, basically. one of the big channelings that we did, which is in the free recordings. I have it in the free recordings on my website. Is that when this kind of creative setup was made for the 3D human experience, there was a creative choice that that included these 12 kind of original viral strains. And from those viral strains, all disease and illness is generated from. But the reason why we have disease and illness and this decay and entropy of the body is connected to reincarnational cycles, because as an energy coming in to explore creation, back in the day when life was very, you were like medieval times, and you lived on a farm, and you tilled the soil, and then you died. There wasn't a need, like consciousness didn't want to stick around for years and years and years having that same life, because it kind of went in, it experienced it. It was like, okay, I don't need to do this for 150 years. Like 40 years of this is enough. So there had to be a way to die, like a way to end that lifespan. So we had disease and decay and entropy of the body to end a lifespan, and then the energy can refocus somewhere else. But now, at this time that we're living in, because of travel, because of all these different technological things we've invented, there's so much more to experience within one lifespan. We don't have to die and go through childhood again and re-imprint to experience more. So that's why now we're able to actually start to dissolve some of these old imprints, like the decay and entropy of the body program that has been a planetary template. We have a massive history of disease and sickness and physical suffering that we don't have to exist under.
That's fascinating, and it actually that resonates and makes a lot of sense. One of my guides talked about this early when I first started channeling, asking why some ET races live thousands of years and humans, and why humans' lifespan shifted. And it was very similar. The evolution of the soul requires growth, and when you're doing caveman stuff, you only need 30 years to do that. And when you're doing stuff what you're doing now, you need 80, 90 years, and soon you'll need 200. So that makes a lot of sense. And the other thing I wanted to touch on too, I want to see if I understood kind of the earth template. When you identify these earth templates with people, is it mostly people who have already spiritually evolved but are stuck on one thing really heavily, and that one thing is kind of what catches them? So like example, when a human knows that we're all souls and we need to experience these things together, and good and bad happen in life, it's the way you deal with it, but still get triggered by politics or war, these things. Is that kind of the identification, like if you're trying to find your own template?
Yeah. There's a few ways to find them, and that's how we help people, is to be able to witness them. But a big part of our teaching is this idea of resistance, and then unintegrated charge. So exactly, for me, in like why I know war is one of my templates, is because it just, like, even as when I went to art school, and I kind of wanted to become a war photographer for a while there. And when I was really little, I wanted to join the military, and then as I was kind of evolving, I was like, I don't really want to kill people, but why that kind of frequency kept showing up, and it just keeps showing up. And then when wars would break out, I would really feel a lot of charge in my body, and get very emotional about it and stuff like that. And then through skydiving, I ended up meeting a lot of people working in the military still, or veterans and stuff, and it just kept showing up. And I would say, so there's templates which speak a little bit more directly to a sort of like a social archetype like that, like war. So, for example, if somebody is really feels a lot of being triggered by by racism or by anything. You know, it's to do. We have a whole bunch of recordings on almost every social topic that you could imagine that are connected to these templates in my library, because I have a library of over 500 recordings that we did over a 2-year period. But the other thing that has come up more recently, and this might actually speak a little bit more to the work that we're doing now, is there's a group of templates which we call the existence templates. And these are actually to do with less maybe those broader social issues or things like the illusion of time and space, but more to do with a deep personal imprints that no matter how much healing work somebody does or how much personal development work they do, they can't seem to get past getting back to this state of being, which it's like it shades people's existence. And what that is connected to is the actual, almost like the wound of birth. When you are all, free floating consciousness connected to, universal source and just having a great time out there outside of the egoic framework. And you come into incarnation, into the much denser, human collective field. We all go through this experience of being a baby, which is it's such a dependent experience after being in the oneness and in connection with everything. Now you are constricted by this body. It's very disempowered, basically. And then you have these parents which are what we call a single source provider. And this actually creates a lot of our projections on God, like what God is, because many religions have this notion that there is a single source God that provides everything to us, as opposed to the idea of being at one with the all consciousness, which is an infinite field that is always abundant, that we're always drawing from, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you come into the disempowered state of being, in this much denser paradigm, which creates resistance to even being here on earth. You have this single source provider, which is the parents, and then depending on how responsive they are to you, and then as you're growing up, their own conditioning and programming, you get these deep projections on what it is to be provided, this projection on God or source, which is very constricted, and then this sort of feeling of being in the body. And those imprints, when you come into incarnation, if you think about it like a balloon blowing up in consciousness, and the color of that balloon, say it's red, it shades everything inside of that balloon. So if you have this idea that existence is powerlessness, for example, a lot of these existence templates are really like when people hit despair, powerlessness, the really gnarly hopelessness, like, God hates me, I'm cursed, futility, very, very intense stuff. And it's actually that those shades are subtly or strongly shaping everything inside of your existence, which includes your relationship to your body, your internal states and mind states of being, your direct quantum reality, which is the reality that you experience as, your neighborhood, your family, childhood, you directly experience, and the broader quantum field, the broader quantum projectional field, which would be things like history, the stuff we see on the news, and social media, and our projections of the future. So right now, for example, with these wars going on in the Middle East, if you really sit with your feelings about what it is, maybe there's a feeling of futility or despair. If you feel strongly about what's going on, about anything, that's probably connected to your existence templates. And once you dissolve the existence templates, what it does is it thins that skin of the balloon, and it allows more source consciousness to come in and to fill your existence with higher frequencies, higher. It's kind of this is part of the process that we call reincarnation without dying. Basically, you're basically dissolving the entire old paradigm that has restricted your existence and allowing new consciousness to come in to generate a new life, basically beyond those illusions that we get so heavily imprinted with in birth and childhood. So it's really powerful, and that's a lot of the work that we're doing now.
That's amazing, and I appreciate the clarity too. It helped me perceive a lot of the layers there too, because
Yeah.
I've heard you speak now several times, and I hear the words and I understand the concept generally, but now it lets me put it into an energetic reference too, which is hugely helpful. So thank you for that. We've only got we got a little less than 10 minutes left, so I want to go to the lightning round, which is our benevolent questions that are personal, so we can get to know you as Georgia, the human being on Earth here. And if you don't want to answer one, you can just pass.
Okay.
But they're all benevolent, so it's have fun with it.
Okay. Okay.
Every time I say it makes people nervous when I'm like, yeah, it's benevolent. They're like, people don't say it's benevolent unless there's issues there.
yeah. Hilarious. Yeah.
All right, so let's go. First one. What is your favorite color?
Do I have to pick one?
Any of them you want. As many as you want.
I'm going to say purple, teal, and pink are definitely in my favorite range. Yeah.
Yeah, the beautiful spectrum there. Purple's my favorite personally too, so I can always appreciate. There's only a few people who said purple, believe it or not, out of all the people.
Are you really? That amazes me. Yeah, right.
Right?
Wow.
What's your favorite food?
Oh gosh. Oh my gosh. I love Mexican food. Yeah, probably that's a real go-to gal for me. Yeah, and croissants.
Oh yeah, croissants are amazing.
Yes,
the French in me can't resist that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's right. A good croissant. Woof.
What is your favorite song and or band?
Oh my gosh. Well, I would say, and I'm actually have a very special bond with this artist. The band is called Never Ending White Lights. It's really this one artist who's a very highly evolved consciousness. Released 3 albums in the late 2000 to 2012. Incredible music. Like I've been working with him to help him get back. He got hit by some crazy enlightenment, ascension experiences, but he's probably one of the most genius artists I've ever experienced. So he's got 3 albums, because I love a bit of like indie rock, basically. 3 albums that are already out there. He's Canadian. And his music that he's making now is just absolutely extraordinary. So I'm hoping that that's going to come out. I can honestly say he's my favorite artist in the world. But I always tended towards, like Pearl Jam. I like a lot of the new modern kind of folk music, like Gregory Alan Isaacoff. He's a big favorite of mine. I've always loved indie music. I'm a huge lover of music, so to pick one song, I don't know if I can do that. Yeah, but
Well, being from Australia, the band that's my favorite band was bigger in Australia than they were here in the US by a little bit in the 90s. Have you ever heard of Ween?
Oh yeah.
See, okay, good.
But are Ween Australian?
No,
they were just bigger here.
Yeah, the Push the Little Daisy song blew them up big over there.
Push the little daisies and then they'll come up. Push the little daisies and then, Yes,
I'll have to
indeed.
send you
Yeah.
a clip of an Australian show that did a fun made fun of that song. It was great.
Yeah,
That's my
hilarious.
favorite band. They're
That's
amazing.
great. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, okay, we covered that. What's your favorite animal?
Ah, I love animals so much. And when people consider, what does their stream of consciousness come from? I feel like I'm very much animal consciousness. I love dogs. I love baby goats. There's something about baby goats frequency that's just next level. Elephants, horses. Yeah, I mean, same thing. It's very hard for me to pick a favorite on that front. If I could have a pet now, because I already had a beloved soul mutt, my dog Neville. I think if I could have any pet right now, it'd have to be like a baby goat or a baby pig. I'd just lose my mind.
Yeah, no, I actually had a baby pig as a kid. It was only for a few months. Yeah, my mom
Oh
had a
my
pot-bellied
god!
pig.
Oh my god! I want
Um,
to punch him in the face. They're so cute.
yeah, I
Yeah.
know they're adorable. And the baby goat thing, I'm a Capricorn, so I endorse the baby goat
Oh
thing
my
too very
god!
much.
So darling. Yeah, so darling. Full of joy.
Yeah, they're amazing. And all right, two more questions.
Mm.
One of them, out of all the places you've been in the world, and you were a well-traveled person even before
Mm.
you became an adult. So what's the favorite place that you have for the beauty in nature and the feeling in
Mm.
that place? What's your favorite place?
Oh my gosh. I got to do a whole bunch of road tripping as well in the last couple of years and go to a bunch of energy vortexes, and I'm very connected to kind of being blown away by nature. Oh my God, that's a tough one. Uh, in terms of being mind blown by what I was seeing, actually, Colorado National Monument, I just posted some footage I shot there on my Instagram page with some of the circle channeling over it. Was really incredible. Bryce Canyon, I ended up on a 5 hour hike I had no business being on. Abs- Absolutely mind blowing. Those are like from the national park, Glacier National Park that I've been to. They're all just absolutely incredible. But um,
Is
yeah,
that in
so
Australia or is that in the
they're
US?
actually all in the States that I've traveled. Yeah.
I see.
In terms of, because I spent about, yeah, almost 2 years just kind of living in my car, driving around and being called to go to these different energy vortexes and kind of download and upload. And I've had some pretty powerful experiences out there communing. Sedona is obviously really amazing,
Oh
but
yeah.
that's such an obvious one. I'm not even going to bring that one up. But Bryce Canyon was extraordinary. Yeah, I mean, we are so blessed with what's out there with nature, and I really encourage more people to get out there and go and commune, because one of the things, just to wrap it up with the existence template, the true source supplier for our physical existence here on Earth is the Earth consciousness itself. It has the codes of creation that if we are not in resistance to being here, and if we have a connection to Earth, the Earth gives us the codes of creation to bring things into physical manifestation. We really need that partnership to bring in a new Earth, a new consciousness, which is why it's so important to not resist being here if you do feel a little bit, galactic and out of place. And dissolving those projections on the source through the existence template allows you to incarnate here with the idea that the earth is your real provider, and to feel in union with that being here, and just going out and connecting with nature and being in the presence of its magnificence and how abundant it is can really do a lot to shift somebody's paradigm of being here on earth if they struggle with that connectedness and groundedness.
Yeah, I never had that. I've always loved my Earth experience, but I did
Mm,
feel so much more resistantless in that energy in Sedona because I don't get that a lot, even though Michigan's
Mm,
beautiful. We live in the middle of a town where work fields are all over each other. So getting out there and getting to have space to breathe and to
mm.
think, it was just something that really helped heal me a lot too while I was there.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Um,
really beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, it absolutely is. So thank you for sharing that. And I'll have to check out Bryce Canyon too and see what that's about. Last question.
Mm.
What is your favorite childhood memory?
um, I, yeah, I mean, I didn't have a great childhood, so it's hard to pick what. Well, let me just say, as I said before, I think my experience in Africa was really incredible because it was the last time my family were all together. My parents were together. And also we just had this, I had a pet monkey. What can I say? Like, and
That's amazing.
we were very free, we would just get on our bikes and ride around, and it was a very kind of free experience. And coming to Australia after that was quite shocking, and it felt like a lot more judgment here and a lot more contraction and resistance, to be honest, even though it's a more you know people are by and large more well off. There wasn't the same degree of uh, other elements of suffering that you would see there, basically, but there was a freedom there, and it's just a very visceral memory for me. It was, yeah, definitely the best part of my childhood.
Well, I'm glad to hear, and yeah, that's that whole dynamic of the way people think living free exists. If I have more
Mm,
money, I can be more free, but
yeah,
there's a lot of freedom in people who live in indigenous regions that have never even had
totally,
contact with the greater world, all the way to places that
totally.
are, like the middle of West Virginia, one of the poorest places in the U.S. You go there and you know, there are some levels of unhappiness there with lack of abundance in the financial or physical sense, but the freedom they have to experience nature and
Yeah,
life, it's different. So yeah, thank you.
it's different. Yeah, for sure.
Thank
Yeah,
you for that. I want to give you an opportunity to kind of share some things with everybody, like how to get a hold of you, any events you have, stuff like that. But before
yeah.
we do that, I wanted to tell you, first of all, it was a great pleasure to get to know you in Sedona. We didn't get a lot of time together, but the time we did have was really insightful and helped me get to understand and know you better as a person. I really appreciated our time together. And
Hmm.
secondly, for doing the work that you do, channeling is not always an easy thing. Assisting other people for a living and for life and for a soul mission, not easy things to do, but you do
Hmm.
them, and you do them with grace and excitement. So thank you for that. And also, being in Australia and being busy working, I appreciate carving out this time to do this, to share your heart and excitement with other people. It
Hmm.
really means a lot to me. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Rob. Thanks for creating a platform. It's really nice to be able to come on and talk about, some of these concepts a little bit more in depth as well. Because, yeah, with 20 years of this work and having these different. So, one of the ways that a lot of this information has come through that has given us the broader picture of how consciousness works and how reality is created is along with the one-on-one work where each client kind of brings through certain pieces like their personal planetary templates, give us a whole picture more about how reality is created. But we have this program, the Monday Night Awakening program, which is really that leading edge of where the latest consciousness downloads are coming in, but also so much information has been coming through over, well, I guess I've been doing them since about 2006 or so. And we have a library backdating to 2007, 2008 of all of these recordings.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, it's amazing. There's we're probably getting close to nearly 600 recordings in there. So if people, and I only make it $12.99 a month. Here I am, used car salesman of consciousness. $12.99 a month, and you can access the whole entire. That resource is just unbelievable. Like what is in there, and You know, I made it affordable so everybody could have the chance to get stuck into it and really, I mean, deep dive into how reality is created. And of course, the frequencies in it do a lot to lift those planetary templates and the things that we're talking about, even if you can't, you know, can't afford to do one-on-one work or any of the other offerings we do. That is definitely a gateway to lift a lot of energy. And we do the Monday nights, but it's really great to have the opportunity to come on and speak in a more synergized way about some of the stuff that's been coming through in the last 20 years and how it actually can help people, even if it sounds a little bit, wow, they're big concepts. Our focus has always been about taking this information about consciousness and turning it into tools and techniques that will viscerally improve people's lives, either individually or collectively, you know, the collective experience. We've always been about this evolutionary shift for human consciousness and how to you know, get more suffering out of this experience and more expansion and creativity and fun and lightness into it. So I just appreciate having, you know, that you know, you've let us share more about that work to your audience.
Oh, absolutely. I think places where people can come and who are like-minded or similarly minded and share new perspective. I mean, this is my excitement in doing this. And I told everybody, as much as I love you guys and as much as I want to share, this is a very selfish endeavor for me too, because I really
Yeah,
enjoy being a part of the conversation and seeing new
yeah,
perspectives. So it's a
yeah.
win-win-win from my perspective, and I
Yes,
appreciate you
yes.
doing that. If people want to watch a video of yours, or if they want
Yeah,
to contact you, how do they
yeah,
do that? I know I've got the links below in the
yeah.
description, but how can they connect?
So Circle Evolution and circleevolution.com is pretty much my handle for everything on Instagram, Circle Evolution, YouTube, Circle Evolution, but really my website. And if you join our email list, because a lot of our work really does, you know, the nature of our work is to break down the old 3D mind so a bigger consciousness can come in. We have developed a way to give people beginning tools and the tools that they need to start going through that process more gracefully. I think what we see in a lot of even the awakening community and stuff is that people have these sudden cracks and they're so confused about what the hell's going on, you know, that they don't have tools to kind of integrate all these different energies that are coming in and coming out, and belief structures are breaking down, and they're, you know, reality is shifting. So because I've been doing it for a while, I kind of understand that there is a process that we're going through. And I love your description about evolution, that it's a process that we're going through. And that it happens in stages and in increments, and everything we do is more about giving people regular exposure, which helps the biological shift take place. Neurologically, we can't create a new reality until our brain can create it. So there's a neurological shift that has to take place, biological shift, you know, the mental and emotional and the energetic stuff all comes along with that. So if you join my email list, you'll start to get some of the tools. We also have a university now. I've been doing these boot camps, and we're populating our university with different trainings about you know, how to really understand these concepts and deep dive a little bit more. So, but Circle Evolution is pretty much the hub. And we do one-on-one work still, the Monday Night Awakening program. Like, it's like, I love doing that. I'll do it to the day I die. It's absolutely incredible, and everybody loves that program that's on it. Is and also in the coming year, we're going to start working more with pods of people. So groups of people who are focused on one area of life, because I have found that when we have a small group of five or six or seven people with a similar focus, we can do a lot more energy work that will, because we work so much with archetypal energy, it will shift the whole pod at once, and it will also work with the planetary templates that are influencing why that pod may be suffering, like a chronic physical conditions pod. We'll be focusing on clearing all the templates that are generating that. And in that work, we're also helping to lift those templates out of the collective, basically. So we're going to be kind of shifting into that work a little bit more next year.
Yeah, that makes sense. You got a lot of people doing the same intention with the same excitement, but also the
So
same
powerful.
resistances in their pathway. You
So
figure it out
powerful.
together,
Yeah. It's so good. I'm getting my tooth pimples. I'm really excited that we're going to be doing that stuff. Yeah, because it's going to be big shifts. Yeah.
Well, I love that. Is there anything else you have coming up that you wanted to share?
That's sort of the big announcement. I guess what I'm getting is the movement to those pods. I think the main thing, if people have been interested and intrigued by the work that we're doing, is to look into our Monday Night Awakenings, because it's just so much cutting edge stuff coming through that. It's really the gathering place where we're generally gathering as a group and shifting the planetary energies and getting the latest updates. And it's just, I don't know, it's so cool. That's kind of like our church, I guess. So I've always been working, a lot of stuff, kind of because I'm so mobile that I've all for a long time worked on creating more of these digital gatherings, digital platforms and stuff. I'd like to do more in-person events, but it's so much work to organize in-person events, honestly.
Yeah.
And that I've just, over the years, I'm like, these kind of this work is able to service a lot of people around the world, and just bring in super high frequencies, and I don't know, it just still makes sense. But it is fun to get out and meet more people, and I'm always open to being invited.
Yeah,
to stuff. Yeah.
The Sedona was amazing experience too, and just being able to be with a bunch of people. That's always been one of my great excitements. But I want to thank you too for coming and sharing your insight. And if you guys are interested to check out more of George's information, the links are below. We're going to be here next week, same time every week, 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific. Come next week and you will get to meet Jamie Price, who's an amazing light language channeler and an amazing person in general. And then we'll announce who we have after that afterwards, guys. Also, if you're interested in going to the Gateway holy moly, I forgot the name of the event. That's horrible. The Gateway to Gratitude. If you want to go to the Gateway to Gratitude with me and Tyler Ellison, that's the 26th and 27th, which is a Saturday and Sunday, 4 hours each day. Both of us will be channeling. It'll be amazing. Go to etwhisper.com. And I think that's it, guys. I love you guys. Thank you all for being here so much. It means the world to me that you guys were chatting in the chat. Beautiful things that you guys were saying about Georgia and about today's show. So thank you guys for being active. Thank you for participating in the social media with the likes and shares and all that stuff. I know it sounds corny, but it does help tremendously. The YouTube has grown hugely since YouTube has graced us with the algorithm changes that they've done to let normal people be able to be viewed instead of only corporations. So that's good. And thank you guys just for showing up. Your presence here is amazing. And without you, Georgia, we wouldn't have been able to have tonight in the way we did. So thank you so much for being here again. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. It was great. Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. All right, everybody, we're calling it a night. I will see you guys here next week at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific, and you will be getting the Galactic Weekly Channeling Friday as scheduled. And I'm going to be dropping some footage of the Sedona event and some other great things, too, for the upcoming Sedona in March. So keep your eyes peeled for the ET Whisper YouTube channel, where all those links will be shared in all the other social medias too. All right, guys. Love you. Have a great night. We'll see you guys next week on the other side. And thanks again for being here at the Enlightenment Evolution Hour. Love you guys. See you next week.